Welcome back, if you're a repeat viewer. If you're not, and this is your first time, hello! I hope you stick around and find something that you like in the playlists. This one is a So What video, so that's the playlist you want to be checking out. And we're going to be doing some woodwork. I'm not very good at woodwork, so you'll have to see how I get on with this one. I do my best. I needed to improve the storage in my workroom. My workroom is very small. It's just a spare bedroom, basically. So I wanted to build something to fit with the 70s aesthetic of the room, that would look like office furniture from that sort of period, and would be practical. This one is a fairly straightforward project for anybody with a bit of experience. If you're new to woodworking and using salvage materials, well, you'll see how much of a challenge it is, because that's kind of who I am with this sort of job. Don't forget, do the comments and the likes and the subscribing and all that sort of thing. That does help. And yeah, hopefully you find this useful, and at the very least you find some of it entertaining as you watch me struggle my way through building something that I've just got in my head. Pat and I recently cleaned out the loft. There's all kinds of rubbish up there. And for floorboards up there, they had been using just random bits of wood, and these two, well, they're drop leaves off an old table. Now these ones are old Ikea shelves, and when you look on the edge you can see there's the raw particle board, and that's where the little brackets went that would have supported them. These ones are plywood, so there's no veneer or finish on the back. You can see there where the gate leg would have been. They've got just the banding on the edge, which is what the plywood is, and they have a veneer of some sort on the front. It looks like it might be oak. Here we are, temporary workbench, just using the wheelbarrow. First job that you have to do before you do any marking out on this is actually get these clean. So I'm just going to use some isopropyl alcohol for that. It gets everything off that's on here and gives us a nice clean surface. Then you need to figure out how big your shelves are going to be. Now the two main things I've got is these ring binders and CDs. The lower shelf's going to be shorter, so that will take the CDs, and the upper shelf is going to be longer, which will take the ring binders. It just so happens that when you use 2 rolls of masking tape, it gives a nice dividing line just between the two tapes. So actually marking these shouldn't require any measurement. And just put the ring binder along the edge, and that will give us a nice straight line to cut on. Yeah. Just make sure when you put your binder on, or whatever you're using to measure, you've got it the right way round. There's the cut line done. This also helps because it prevents tear out on the veneer, because these do have a veneer on the top, which is in pretty good shape actually, apart from the minor damage to the finish, but we're going to refinish these anyway. Just to make sure this line's straight, I'll mark that with a pen. Let's get Pat with the jigsaw. I'm going to use the wheelbarrow for this bit. Makes a decent stand. Now do be careful when you're actually sanding veneer like this. It's very, very thin. All I'm really doing is taking the old bad finish off. So I'm not using a very coarse paper, and I'm just using a standard sander like this. I'm going to have to change tack on this. The sandpaper's working, but it's clogging up really, really fast on this finish, so I'm going to have to try it with some paint stripper or a scraper instead. I tried the stripper I've got, and it won't touch this finish at all. I don't know what this finish is, but it's really, really hard. I ended up having to use some 80 grit sandpaper, which I would never normally use on veneer. I'd normally only use that on solid wood. I've also keyed back the edge and the back
which is just plywood. It's not anything fancy, because that's going to get painted. The other thing I'm going to have to do is alter these brackets. I somehow managed to misunderstand the label and I thought it was a long and a short on the packet. It's not, they're even. Got half of these all sanded down now, and you can see the big difference in colour. These paler ones, this is just the bare oak veneer, and then this is the darker finish that was put on. Now, this mark here actually disappears when you make it wet, and it's only the varnish and the stain on here that's affected. So I know I can sand that off, and that's no problem, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Battery's flat. Get another one. Fresh battery. Well, fresh enough. Just nicked one out of one of the other machines. Now time to paint. And I'm making use of a big cardboard box. This is a really good way to lazy mask things when they're flat like this. All I've done is mask around the edge of each piece, and then you turn it face down onto the cardboard. The masking tape prevents overspray onto the board, and it being face down basically acts like you'd put masking paper on. It's quicker, it's easier, and it's effective. And when you're doing big stuff like this, anything that saves time is a good idea. For paint, I am using this stuff, which we got for doing the Lanchester, and it's pretty much a full can. We only used a tiny bit, and it's not a colour I think I'll use on anything else, so I might as well use it on this to tidy these boards up. A little bit windier than I'd like for doing this. Needs must. We're going to start by spraying the edges first, and then we'll fill in. Light coats, don't try and do it all in one go. Right, that's pretty much empty now, and this thing, the Genelite Spray Master, is fantastic. Saves your hands. If you can get hold of one, do. One advantage to it being windy is these have dried quite quickly, so you can see these are nice and even, and these are the ones I've turned over. And the masking works really, really well. There's no overspray to worry about. And you get a nice sharp edge. Ready for the next stage. Normally I'd do this outside, but the weather's not letting me, so we are using this stuff, which again is left over from the work on the Lanchester. We used this on the woodwork in the Lanchester and it turned out very nicely. Now I want these to look slightly teaky, and this colour actually comes out fairly close to the teak furniture I've got when it's on a paler wood like this. It's really easy to apply. Okay, so we'll do 2 or 3 coats on this, depending on how many it needs. First coat tends to be quite heavy. The wood's very thirsty from not being, well, it's got no finish on it, it's just bare wood, so it just drinks it all up. You need to leave it quite a while between coats, but there's almost no smell to it, and it's a very easy job. With your rags, just make sure that when you're finished, you put these outside, because I've not had it happen, but one of the problems with these kind of finishes is the rags can spontaneously combust. So you do need to leave them outside, out of harm's way, so that doesn't happen. Got the safety goggles on because we've got the grinder to use. You don't often use grinding in woodwork, but this is metalwork. So these are the brackets I'm going to be using. And to make them fit the shelves that I've got, I need to take a little bit off this end, so it's just the width of the masking tape, and this end, which is for the shorter shelf, needs cutting basically in half. So these masking tape lines give me a rough guide of where to cut, and there are end caps that push in that just make this tidy. I've changed to a flat wheel and I've taped these together just so I can do the ends, make them all nice and even. Ideally I'd have a bench grinder for this, it'd be a lot easier, but make do and mend. One full set of modified shelf brackets. One quick spritz of satin black just to cover up the bare metal bits. Just remember when you do the top ones, if you're doing some of these yourself, little fixing holes. The caps actually have a slot on one side and not on the other. So just in case, even though I'm pretty sure this will clear, just make sure that that slot lines up with your screw hole and then it's not going to get in the way. Yeah, you'd never know I'd done anything. Problem solving. Part of any project. I had to change my plans a little bit on this one part way through. So these shelf brackets, for the top one, you can just push the shelf all the way back to the wall, nice flush finish, no worries. The bottom one you can't do that because of how thick these brackets actually are. So you have two choices. You either notch a piece out of the shelf so it goes nicely around the bracket. I'm not confident enough in my woodworking abilities at this point to do that in a way that would be tidy and smart. So I needed to find another solution, and that's where the hardboard comes in. It turned out that the standard width for the hardboard was just what I wanted. I didn't want a flush fit right to the edge. Because of the shape of these shelves with the corners on them, I can't really push the shorter side of the bracket all the way to the edge. And I also like a little bit of an overhang on the edge anyway. So I'm going to trim these two sections of hardboard down, and I'm going to vinyl wrap them. And then we will build the shelves and the brackets and the hardboard all together as one unit, and then put that on the wall as one piece, rather than as what would look like two separate shelves. This also means I don't have the big gap down the back of the lower shelf, so that should act as a decent stop. Right, now the fun bit of actually sticking this on. You have to just do your best because the hardboard is smooth but it's not perfect. So you will have a few little dimples. That's just part of the nature of the product. Right, you don't need to worry about wrinkles or anything on the back either. It's not seen, so I wouldn't fret about that. And that is your finished backboard. Let's turn all of this lot into a completed unit. It's fairly straightforward. The only difficulty that I've noticed is with these brackets being quite as thick as they are, what I would normally use to mark the screw holes, like a pen or a pencil, I can't because I can't get them all the way through. So I'm using a knitting needle instead. It's not mega sharp, but it's enough to put a dimple into the wood when you put it through. Your important thing to remember when you're putting things together like this is that this backing board is centered. I've already measured this and I know it's about 69 millimeters, nice, from the edge of the shelf to the edge of the panel. So as long as that's the same on both sides, that's fine. So we'll mark a line, put the shelf bracket on like that, then you mark your dots, and that will allow us to do that section. And then to make sure that your smaller shelf actually lines up with your upper shelf, when they're the same original panel like these are, just lay them out side by side and carry your line straight up from this end all the way off the edge of the board, and you should be good. Just using the marker pen there, just to make it easier to see the dots than just the plain old dimple. You can see as well on the back there's these holes from the old fixings. I didn't bother filling those on either of these shelves because you don't see them. Well, I had to go to the shop and get some new fixings because I didn't have any that were quite the right size for this. It's a little bit awkward. Normally I use kind of flat brackets rather than these very chunky ones, so everything I had was either much too long or much too short. So this one's all screwed in. I'm using these button head screws where I can because these holes on here aren't countersunk, so I'm a little bit limited on what fixings I can really use. The problem I have is these, if I screw these in really tight, the point does stick out the end of the board. I haven't done that, I measured it first. So I have to be very, very careful. This is why I'm not using power tools for this. So because I'm not using a drill, because I'm very worried I'm going to go straight through and ruin the finish, what I'm doing instead is I'm using a much smaller screw, and this serves as both a drill and a pilot hole maker and all the rest of it. So you line up your bracket, you can see I've started the back one. Drop your screw down into the hole, line that up with your pencil line and the mark, which I've already started screwing through here, that you previously made. So you use this one, the big one, first, just to get the hole marked accurately, and then you use your small one and a screwdriver and you just screw that in as far as you know you can go. That then gives you a decent pilot hole for putting these in. It's still awkward, but at least it's working and I'm not risking damaging the visible side, which is good. Well, this proved a little bit more awkward than I was expecting. Yeah, sometimes when you think things through in your head, they don't actually work in practice, and this is a good example of that. I got it in my head that I could put something under this shelf to support it while I screwed it in. Now, you have to put the top one on before you put the bottom one on, because otherwise it's just too awkward to get to these screws. So I had the great idea of, I know, I'll just thread one of the brackets through the chair and then I'll rest the shelf on the top. Then I mocked it up and then I realised if I do that I've got a chair stuck in a shelf unit, so that's not going to work. So I looked for something I could rest on the bottom here that was tall enough to support this, and I have nothing that's the right size. I have everything that's like one size or the other, but I don't have anything that can combine to do it. So the only thing I could think to do was make the pilot holes, as I did before, and then start the screws off both sides, and I'll just screw these in gradually to keep it nice and even until the shelf is pulled in as tight as it needs to be. This shelf, all nice and secured, the way I did it was support it with my hand underneath as I screw down from the top, and you sort of go side to side to stop it pulling or stressing anything out. And I thought, great, all I need to do now is put the backing board on. And just propped up there, it looks about right, doesn't it? Yeah, I am not a smart man. For a start, somehow I've cut this too long. Now that's easy to fix, I can just trim that down, no bother. The more observant among you will notice the other problem. In my head, I just tacked this onto the back of both shelves, but I can't do that because, well, the shelves don't line up, do they? I'm going to have a little bit of a think and then I'll figure this out. I've got an idea. But I feel very silly for doing that. Well, that was a stroke of luck. I do like that sort of thing. When we cleared out the loft, there was this wooden beading, just like the square profile. Not very much of it, but just too much to throw away. It just looked like it might be useful. And it is, because what I can do now is I can pop this down here on the shelf, and then when I drop the backing board in, that goes behind the backing board and stops it from pushing out at the top. All I need to do is trim the excess off here just to make sure that's a nice tidy flush finish. That's easy enough, I can peel the vinyl back because it's only just been done, and then we should be good. Not quite how I plan to do it, but I think that'll work just fine. Finally got this all together. Yeah, me and wood don't get along very well, and I'm finding this a lot harder than I think some of you experienced woodworkers would find it. Now, I'm going to show you the ugly truth. Don't be too mean. This is the back. This bit isn't seen, so I'm not worried about it too much. You can see the bead I put on there. I managed to get one pin in, one of these panel pins, which were much too long from the front, but I couldn't get anything to go in on this side at all. I was just bending pins, risking damaging things, so I just left it alone. Sometimes I think that's best. These panel pins are much too long. I don't have anything else suitable, and I don't particularly want to do another run to the shop to try and find some. I just want this project done at this point. So I did the only thing I could think of that was sensible, which is knock the pin through and then fold it flat and hammer it down. I know that's not the way you do it, but it's the way I'm doing it. And the same with the panel pins that hold this to this. None of the nails I've got are short enough, and the tacks that I had out are actually much too short to go through any of this, so it'll just have to do. The only people that are going to see this is you and me, so it doesn't really matter. As long as it doesn't fall off, I don't care. And of course, this hasn't stuck down quite as well since I peeled it off and stuck it back down, which is normal, but again, doesn't matter, nobody's going to see it, it's on the back. So just remember, with jobs like this, good enough is good enough. And for what I'm doing, this is perfectly good enough. Most of the time, you'll view it like this and it'll be full of stuff. So I'm really not that worried. So let's get this up on the wall, get the stuff on, and then you'll see how it actually looks.
Okay, glamour shots out of the way. Let's put this back together properly so I can actually get everything back where it belongs. I mean, let's be honest. All these pretty shelves and things, that's not how people normally do things. They end up like this. But I do have one more thing to show you. When I said that there were 2 drop leaves, I made 2 shelves. Because why wouldn't you? This one is for holding the CDs, and I did have a little bit of an issue, which is that I didn't have enough to make another shelf. So I've just improvised with some sherry glasses and some leftover board. Does the job for now. I'm eventually going to get one of those acrylic bent shelves that go over like that, that's the right size, and that will solve that storage problem. It looks a lot better than the other shelves that I had in here, so I'm really happy with them. They're very practical and they answer my storage problem, which is a good thing. Right, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for sticking around for a little bit of bonus footage at the end. Catch you next time.